Hey guys, welcome back to Joko Yo, and I think this makes episode number 42. So much fun. I hope you're enjoying it. If you've gotten this far, you must be. So for today, it's going to jump right into it because there's a lot to go into, and you'll see in a minute. See, for this, today, we have to go pretty far back, just so we can have a little bit of context. Now, I so do love it when we can see big history and little history working together. Like those events, when you can do that, those events make stories so good. And literally, we're going to have to today go into world history and use it to connect and explain a little bit of Johnston County history. I mean, like, they're so connected. How cool is that? So, before we get far, I will admit to something first. I have learned over my few years that I have absolutely no aptitude for any kind of mechanical work, none. I'm not good at farm work. I'm not good at landscaping, light gardening maybe, but that's about it. I'm pretty scared of electricity, but I've been told that I'm not too bad as a plumber. Let that be what it is. Take that as you want. What I'm trying to say is that I don't really have a knack for those things and for a lot of things, and I appreciate those that can do those things proficiently. I learned, however, that my talent is in the learning and teaching of history. That's about what I'm good at. I want to learn. I want to teach. That's my interest. I'm pretty good at that stuff. My gift is my song, so to speak, and to quote a little bit of Elton John. So, if that's where my interest and my talent lay, I better make the most of it. So, here's my point. Unless you're a student of history, you may not be as familiar to the Ottoman Empire as you may be to the Roman Empire. But a little knowledge of the Ottoman Empire, or, just a little, is necessary to this story of Johnston County history. And this is what I'm good at. Well, if I may be so bold. So let's start with the Roman Empire, since we're more familiar with that one, and then go to the Ottomans, so we can go to the home of roughly Johnston County, roughly a century ago. So this won't take long. So the Roman Empire, togas, Pompeii, and such, at its height was pretty large enough that in its later days, got a little bit too large for it to be manageable. By its later days, it also lost its vision. It was by 200 CE, or if you're an older history person, AD, same thing. It was by 200 CE about 500 to 600 years old. It was the richest, most powerful civilization around, and it had forgotten what to do with that rich and power. Or there was nothing left to do, at least. In either case, being Roman wasn't being Roman or even Italian anymore. There were Spanish Romans, French Romans, Turkish Romans, Egyptian Romans, Iraqi, Palestinian, German, British, Libyan, Greek Romans. You don't really necessarily have to be from Rome anymore. So by 300 CE, it was pretty much all too much to handle, and the empire was split in half. The original Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Empire permanently. There were now two. Now, history books tell us that the Roman Empire fell in the 400s CE, and that's partially true. The Western Empire containing Rome did essentially kind of just whimper away and die. But the Eastern Roman Empire lived on for another 1,000 years. Now, it built the largest Christian church, the Eastern one did. It built the largest Christian church in the world at the time, called the Hagia Sophia. It made a lot of achievements in human rights, military techniques. It put together, for the most part, the books of the Christian Bible. I mean, they did some pretty good stuff. It was Greek-based, not Roman-based. Not France, but Greece. They called themselves Romans, and we would call them Romans too if it wouldn't confuse us as to which Rome we were talking about, the East or the West, when we're talking about the Roman Empire. So, to differentiate the West and the East, we call the East the Byzantine Empire after the first name of its capital, Byzantium, which itself was later called Constantinople. Follow me so far? Good. You'll see. The Byzantine Empire stayed around till 1453 when that capital finally fell after years of weakening to the Ottoman Empire, the strongest Muslim country. Now, they thought the Byzantines kind of whimpered away the same way the Romans did. Different circumstances, of course. But, when it's done, it's done. And the Ottomans swooped in and took it over. And the Ottomans were at their strongest when they conquered Constantinople, just like the Roman Empire had been 1,500 years ago. They were growing, strengthening, getting smarter. And after they beat the Byzantines, they converted the Hagia Sophia into a mosque, changed the name of the capital to Istanbul. They were cosmopolitan too, just like the Romans before. The cosmopolitan means sort of like e pluribus unum, out of many one. So, with the fall of the Byzantines, now they were Greek subjects of the Ottomans, Serbian subjects, Armenian, Lebanese, Syrian, to go along with the Turkish, the Iraqi, Palestinian, etc. So, like the Byzantines before them and the Romans before them, the Ottomans began to weaken, and instead of making hard choices and doing the hard work necessary to stop or slow down its decline, the leadership did the two worst things it could possibly do: deny that anything was wrong and blame others. Those are pretty bad. Close your eyes and say it's someone else's fault. They blamed other countries, but worse than blaming other countries for their own slide, they began to turn on minority groups in their own country, claiming they were actually foreigners when that's not really the case. By the late 1800s, persecution against minority groups in the Ottoman Empire was in full swing as the empire began to fall apart. Now, two groups seem to have gotten the worst of it: the Lebanese and the Armenians, that were in the Ottoman Empire and had been from nearly the beginning. Other minority groups were mistreated by the Ottoman government too, but these two groups seem to have gotten the worst of it. So some decided to, and some were able to leave. Now, many wanted to leave because persecution against those groups got pretty bad. Though it seems the worse the Ottoman Empire did, the worse they persecuted their minority groups. Some decided to leave. Some were able to leave. Again, many wanted to leave, but only a few could afford to. But enough Armenians left that there were sizable Armenian groups in the northeast United States and some in California by 1870. Then it got worse, and more Armenians became more desperate to leave. The massacres of 1894 and 1896 resulted in even more Armenians in the United States. The Adana massacre led 12,000 Armenians to come to the United States to flee, to be refugees. And the Balkan Wars of 1913 brought even more, making 60,000 Armenian immigrants in the United States before World War I and 78,000 Armenian immigrants after World War I. You may have heard of the phrase, the Armenian genocide. Well, that's real. That happened. They went into places and committed genocide. In fact, if you want to make another connection, it was actually the Ottoman Empire that pioneered the use of concentration camps that the Germans would use later in World War II. They did that. It wasn't just Germans, and it wasn't just Jews. The Turks did it against the Armenians. So many of the Armenian families that we see that pop up in the northeast United States are going to be in Rhode Island, also in Massachusetts, and also New York and Boston. And so many of the Armenian families came here and worked their behinds off, and they prospered, and they served their communities very well. One descendant of these immigrants became a surgeon and moved to Smithfield in 1926, where he became Johnston County Hospital's lead surgeon from 26 to 1974, named Dr. Vartan Ambar Davidian. On the other side, the Lebanese. Those that could left as soon as they could. Many could not. Now, NC State has done so much research on this group that if not for them, so much would not be known. Their research has preserved immigration and census records of Lebanese refugees from the Ottoman Empire and the Turkish government that followed. They even made a video called Cedars and the Pines. I've watched it. It's really, really good about this very topic. Now, NC State's records show that Lebanese immigrants moved all over the United States, including Johnston County and its neighbors. For example, in the 1930 census public record, you could see families called Dibbs, Thomas, Lutz, Caslin, Fidel, and Dunn in Harnett County, all those Lebanese families. You also see the families with the last name of George and Joseph. In Wendell, we have the last name of Cannon, Clayton, Millard. In Smithfield, you see names McCall, Barodi, Nassif, Davis, Robbie, Wadia, Lewis. All those are Lebanese last names that, again, have been compiled by NC State. Now, some of the largest Lebanese families and refugees and migrants to the United States are more familiar to longtime residents of Johnston County. For example, the Rabils family, R-A-B-I-L, has a large presence in the 1930 census of Lebanese immigrants. In fact, Smithfield, Selma, nearby Goldsboro, Weldon, and Wilson all had Rabils in 1930. The Abdallas family, also another family, is found in 1930 census in Selma, as well as being found in other towns in North Carolina like Leakesville, Rockingham, Kinston, and Raleigh. Now, the Rabils and Abdallas families, as well as the Joseph families, are well represented in the 1930 census in Johnston County, and also in the memories of Johnston County longtime residents because of the importance of Rabils' dry goods store of Smithfield, Abdallas' clothing store in Benson, and its neighbor Joseph's, which also was represented in the town of Irwin in Harnett County. Big history, small history. Now, as the Ottoman Empire began to die, its leaders began essentially thrashing about in desperation for survival and doing things that its founders probably would not have thought it would stoop to. And as a consequence, drove out people from their places that had been their homes for hundreds of years. People that were bedrocks of their communities, people that brought essential stability to the land, they were pushed out, but came here, where they and their descendants, even today, serve their homes well. In 1924, however, the U.S. Immigration Act stopped all that migration almost completely by establishing quotas based on national origin. But up until that point, well, Jack Paar, spelled P-A-A-R, he was host of The Tonight Show before Johnny Carson. He gave a really good quote about this, and he said, or about immigration in general, and he said, "Immigration is the sincerest form of flattery." To which, if I can be so bold as to represent Johnston County, to those Rabils and Abdallas and Josephs and Davises and McCalls and Cannons, thanks guys, we love you too. And that ends this episode, y'all. More's coming, and there's also another announcement again that I'm just waiting for just the right number to hit until I make that announcement. But man, it's gonna be fantastic. The announcement that's coming up soon is gonna be something that I've not seen anyone else do, and I'm so excited about it. But anyway, until then, y'all, I hope you liked it. I appreciate you listening. It's always fun to do this, and y'all be good.